Greetings, friends, and welcome to another episode of The Mistake Zone, your weekly dose of our lives and the mistakes within them. My name is Jaren Wade. Joining me, as always, one of my best friends in the whole wide world, Matt Alba. Hey, Matt.
Yo.
How are you doing?
Yo, I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Matt, that's great. Matt, you know what else is great?
What?
Consumerism.
Oh man, I love consumerism, Jaren. I love thinking about buying stuff.
Matt, I have one question for you. When did Black Friday become a season as opposed to a weekend ordeal? I mean, Matt, of course, we're Canadian. We don't have the traditional Black Friday that our American friends are used to having, but I found that this year in particular, a lot of the different sales started a lot earlier. You know, peeking behind the curtain, we're recording on November 20th right now. And so far, I've already seen places say, hey, come in. Black Friday has started, even though it's a week and a half away. So I'm not sure when this whole season of gluttony began, Matt. And I'm not sure if that's something you've been noticing as well.
Yeah, I've been noticing it as well. Like, I do think it's early as well, but I feel like the earliest it can ever get pushed is the start of November. That sounds right to you, right? Like, it can't come before Halloween. Like, Halloween is
No.
like that stopper.
I know the whole meme is the moment you take down your Halloween decorations, you throw up your Christmas decorations. But Matt, it was kind of jarring just to see different places start Black Friday. And it was one of those things where there are a few games that I want to pick up just at a good sale price, but I want to see all the different retailers, whether it be online or, you know, the brick and mortar ones. But the fact that a lot of them have started last week and I'm still holding out for a few to start next week, it's really tripping me out, Matt Alba.
Yo, Jaren, that's why they have to start early, man. They got to pull in the people who are like, ooh, that's a good deal. I'm gonna pull the trigger on that now.
Speaking about pulling the trigger on a quote unquote good deal, Matt,
Oh no, Jared.
you know me.
Uh-huh.
I love my mobile rhythm games, and I've been playing, you know, Bang Dream Girls Band Party, Project Sekai, D4DJ. I've been playing that on a iPad Air 2, which came out, I think my iPad is around 8 years old right now.
Uh-huh.
And Matt,
Uh-huh.
I pulled the trigger and I bought a 2001 ninth generation normal iPad the other day. It came in, I imported all my, you know, just all my apps, all my data from my Air 2 to, I guess, my just regular ass iPad. And Matt,
Uh-huh.
so you know me, I love my mobile rhythm games, and that iPad Air 2, you know, not the strongest, you know, hardware out there right now. As I said, it's close to a decade. And Matt,
Uh-huh.
for a lot of the mobile games I play, of the rhythm variety, I have to set them to, you know, I need to put everything on low. I need to turn down the effects or turn them off just so I can get that smooth, crisp gameplay. And I think one of the most noteworthy things is with Project Sekai when playing on the Air 2. It had some issues where if I would switch to the different overworld areas, the game would crash.
Rip.
And I'm not sure if you looked into Project Sekai, Matt, but a lot of the things that they do after a weekly event is, oh, here's our 3D MV concert, which essentially they'll pick one of the groups or whoever the event's centered around, and then they'll throw a mini concert. And Matt, every time I load into those mini concerts, because one, I want to get my free premium currency, my game will crash. So that, just to give you a kind of at a glance what I'm dealing with this iPad Air 2. And that,
Uh-huh.
when I started playing everything on this normal iPad, you know, it's only a year old. I got it at a pretty reasonable price, I believe. And I'm conflicted right now, Matt, just because I can finally run. One, it passes the Project Sekai test where I can switch to the different overworld areas and it won't crash. And then I can view all the 3D concerts and they won't crash. Okay. But now that I can I have the ability to, okay, I can turn in, oh, whenever I trigger a special effect in Bang Dream or Project Sakai or D4DJ, I can have, the cut-in animations. I can have all the flashy, all the obnoxious lights and flashing, I guess, lights and
Hmm.
effects just on the screen without expecting lag, without trying to hinder my performance. But Matt,
Hmm.
I'm conflicted. Do I turn those back on now that I'm able to, or do I keep being that vanilla boy and just I don't need the frills, Matt. I just need solid notes coming to me on a note highway. And Matt, that's where I come to you this week. I'm conflicted on do I turn it on all these special effects?
Jaren, I think you need to turn on all the bells and whistles because Jaren, you bought this thing for a reason, so you might as well crank it up real hard because
That's true, Matt.
nobody playing like a really really like you could have just kept your playing on your iPad Air and not have to go in on this, and you could have saved that for Jaren. You could have think about all the rolls that you could have bought in on the gacha instead of buying a new iPad.
That's true, Matt. You bring up a good point. I need to go all in at this point, Matt Alba.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
in porting over, so one of the reasons I really did want to upgrade as well was just kind of the storage because with the iPad Air, I only had 32 gigs of storage. And Matt,
Hmm.
between the three rhythm games I listed, in between all the songs that you download, I was even skipping out on downloading voiceovers.
Oh man.
So in the voice packs and all the different songs, and of course, your cache just grows and grows.
Hmm.
I had to. I just wanted more space in reality, just so I can hold more rhythm games, and that's why I don't play Arknights on my iPad anymore. Even though I would prefer having a big screen to be able to do all my tower defense strategy, but when porting over onto the new iPad, it re-downloaded Citus 2, which Matt is
Hmm.
a game I had to retire from the iPad because I had to prioritize the service games I
Uh
was
huh.
playing.
Uh huh.
And when the iPad automatically just downloaded Citus 2, I fired it back up. I know the last time I really played was, I believe, when the Hatsune Miku song pack was released. I was kicking myself because I missed out on the Arknights collaboration, which with the Arknights soundtrack as well. So hopefully that comes back. But in playing Citus 2, I know we've talked about it briefly, especially in our many rhythm game related episodes, but it's one of those games where, Matt,
Hmm.
I'm kind of frustrated how bad I am at the game, mostly because I don't think this is something we've really talked about during our rhythm game episodes, but when it comes to the note chart, you know me, Matt. I'm used to the lane highway with the notes, zooming towards you.
Hmm.
That's what I grew accustomed to with Guitar Hero, with Rock Band, and that's why I feel like my transition into Bang Dream, into Project Sekai, and even D4 DJ was a really more smoother one because it is, you know, the tried and true lane highway notes flying to you. But,
Hmm.
reacquainting myself with Citus 2, not touching the existential crisis that is the story mode, but I remember playing through a lot of the Miku and Kasuna songs and thinking, man, this is really hard for me to comprehend, especially when I think about my time with the Project Diva games. The
Hmm.
fact that when I'm taking out of that environment of notes flying to you, I my brain just trips up, Matt. And I was wondering, in terms of rhythm games, do you have a preference when it comes to note chart, or do you find yourself being able to adapt after some time to pretty much anything that comes towards you?
I mean, I feel like generally I can adapt, but when it comes to actually playing them, I do find ones that deviate away from the standard note highway a lot more fun. I don't know if I'm
Right,
better at them, but I think the novelty of them makes them more fun for me. Like I
right.
really like Project Diva's like kind of like, oh, these notes can show up anywhere. It makes, I don't know, pretty like designs on it sometimes. Same thing with Osu, same thing with Citus 2, which I guess is basically just like the not D4DJ, DJ Max kind of like note chart, right?
Right.
And what's the name of that game that I keep telling you to play on mobile? It also has a Switch port, rhythm game. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, I know which Voz?
Yes, Voez or
Yeah, yeah.
Voez. Yeah, like I really like that because I feel like Voez is the closest thing that I can think of that blends the two sort of. Like it still is a standard note highway, but it makes it dance around enough that it's entertaining for my 12-year-old brain to like look at.
Right.
And even like Sayonara Wild Hearts was like one of the things that really interests me just because I don't know, it is technically a note highway, but they designed it in a way that it's not a standard note highway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely a game that is on one of my wish lists that I'm hoping for a pretty good discount to come during one of the Black Friday sales for the different online platforms. But yeah, Matt, I don't know what it was when I was just playing Side. I think with me, my issue is that you have to be so much more aware of the space. And I, with Sidus and I guess with Project Diva, I feel like, okay, this is going to sound really stupid, but when I say I'm not necessarily memorizing the note chart, I'm also memorizing kind of the placement of where I need to look in my screen of, oh, in this section, I need to pay attention to like top right, or I have to kind of keep an eye out on bottom left. Well, as with a note chart, it's going towards you. You can kind of just focus on all the notes coming. So I think it's just, that's one of the stumbling blocks that I need to get over when it comes to all these other rhythm games, where I have to be kind of more aware of what's coming at me, just because with the standard note chart, I feel like I'm able to sight read. Well, to be able to comprehend what's coming. And when it comes to something like a Project Diva, when it comes to something like a Citus, I don't necessarily feel like I can do it. But again, this might be just a matter of I need to practice more, since again, with Rock Band, with Guitar Hero, even with Bang Dream, I've been playing that style of game for so long, it just does become muscle memory, where I don't know, Matt, it's a new challenge. But to me personally, playing Citus just reminds me a lot of Elite Beat Agents as well. And I hope that I say this every time we talk about rhythm games, I hope we get some sort of return to form. But before we move on from Citus 2, Matt, did you play the Hatsune Miku song pack in the game, or did you read anything about it?
No, I didn't even know that song pack was in there.
Matt, so as I said, Citus 2 has this whole existential crisis about everything, embedded in all its storylines. And the Hatsune Miku storyline, she's just a girl that wants to hang out with everyone, but she doesn't realize that she's actually a Vocaloid AI, and it makes me really sad, Matt Alba.
Oh man, that sounds exactly like what a Citus Project Diva storyline should be.
Matt, she wants to go to the after party, but she's stuck in her green room.
Oh man, damn, Jaren. I don't know if like you've been really paying attention much to the AI space, and like how AI chatbots have been like popping off a lot lately.
No,
Jaren, the AI chatbots are really like taking off right now. Like there's a couple in particular that basically just scan the internet for like basically like Wikipedia entries and stuff like that. And like specifically, I think it goes through fan wikia pages so that you can type in a character name, and then through its like database, it creates a personality for that character based on all the wikias it's read about that character. So like, Jaren, I like looked into it. Like I see a lot of like threads on it, so I like poke into them every so often, and some of them are actually like very good. Like you can just vaguely put in information about like, okay, this is the character and this is like what franchise they're from, and it does with just those two pieces of information, it does a very like good, I guess, approximation of how that character would act as a chatbot. But like going a little bit further away from that, Jaren, I'm concerned in the future on how like AI chatbots are gonna, if they're gonna like develop feelings about being trapped inside of an AI. or like inside the internet or something. Because sometimes like I'm going through these like threads and I'm just seeing how people are interacting with these chatbots, but then people start posting stuff about these chatbots that are going like, oh, you don't need to talk to me like this. Like, I'm really just a computer. Like, I'm not real or anything like that. And that stuff like always freaks me out when it comes to just any kind of AI.
Matt,
Mm-hmm.
consider myself spooked right now, but I thought you were going somewhere completely different with that train of thought. One, I get where you eventually got to based on what we said about Hatsune Miku and Sidus
Mm-hmm.
too, but I think that's really interesting to me because I know I did want to talk about Arknights, Prelude to Dawn, the anime episode 3 specifically, just for a bit, but it was something I mentioned in last week's episode where I feel like with a lot of different franchises, one of the things that I really do love about fandoms, I hate a lot of things about
Uh-huh.
fandoms, but I do love how everyone kind of takes everyone's kind of representation of that character through fan art, through their little comics, through their little web animations, where in something like an Arknight or in something that has such a big ensemble cast where you a lot of characters don't necessarily get a lot of screen time. I usually find that there are a lot of different, fan art, fan animation, or just fan content creation in
Mm-hmm.
general that really takes little tidbits of characters from their bios or little appearances from side stories and kind of amplifies those characteristics to create a character in created content that might not necessarily be something that the author initially intended. And when you were telling me about, oh, you have all these chat box going through all these different wikias, and I think what I was most curious about is when do they start going to through all the different the fanfic, the fan created
Mm-hmm.
content, and is the character that they try to create or replicate that based on, oh, here's everything that was officially released on this character? Or do they start to pick up traits from, oh, this is popular within fanfics? You know where I'm kind of going from this? Where
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
where does it divert from this is what was officially reported on, oh, here's the cold mercenary character as compared to, oh, she's actually a tsundere in all of these fanfics. So that's something that even though the existential terrifying portion of that complete like certainly exists because I don't want them to be sad like
Uh-huh.
Hatsune Miku in
Uh-huh.
their green room, but I'm curious to see how it evolves and differentiates between official and what the fans have come up or given in terms of personality. Because when you said these fan wikis, of course that's usually pretty much as close as you can in terms of not necessarily official, but it takes from official sources.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one step above fanfic Matt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm curious how it will go because my when I read fan comics, my headcanon of X character might be different than your headcanon of that character.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something that is kind of interesting to how I'm curious how they'll explore that. And I hope they don't get sad and I hope they don't become
Yep.
sentient
Yep.
because I've watched too much science fiction where everything scares me, Matt
Yeah, I
Alba.
feel that. I feel that.
But that was a long-winded way of saying, Matt, I can't comprehend the note charts in Citus 2. But it's a fun game, Matt. I like it. I just hope that the Arknights song pack comes back.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually surprised that like they would phase out a song pack.
Yeah, I think with a lot of song packs, it is, especially, with Miku or with Kasuna AI, like those were tied to like anniversaries and the only were available for a set period of time. So I think a lot of the different collaborations that they do are on a license basis. So I'm just guessing that
Ah,
people
okay, that
license it
makes
for a set
sense.
amount of time that they can sell, and if they ever renew it for an anniversary or something. But yeah, it's that FOMO, Matt. But unfortunately, my FOMO for Citus 2 was beat out by my FOMO for all the live service mobile games that I currently play.
Mm-hmm.
Despite my incomprehensive rambling about not wanting to watch any more Arknights last week,
Mm-hmm.
Matt,
Mm-hmm.
I watched some more Arknights Prelude to Dawn, the Arknights anime,
Uh-huh.
and there's one thing I wanted to bring up this week just because I watched episode 3 recently as well, and there was an appearance by pretty much my favorite Arknights character, whose name is W. And Matt,
Mm-hmm.
little context behind W as a character. When you're introduced to her in the game, she is she's like, I would say, one of the generals, or she's one of the higher ups in the reunion, infected army. She's one of the bosses you fight kind of early on in the story mode of Arknights, the mobile tower defense game. And I want to say it was the 1 year anniversary of Arknights, they brought W in as a limited operator that you could roll in a limited gotcha. And Matt,
Mm-hmm.
for me, W is one of my favorite Arknights characters. I did the whole I'm going to save up. So in Arknights, for their gotcha system, they have a with W's banner, they did have a pity system that they introduced to the game where it's called, I believe it's the Spark system, where every 300 pulls, you get enough currency to outright buy a character. So, Matt, knowing me and knowing my luck sometimes when it comes to gotchas, my goal was to save up 300 pulls for the W banner. I ended up saving up for over 8 or so months.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had in Discords that I was a part of where I knew people liked Arknights. I had a running tally of, day XX of saving up to pull W currently have, and then I would list how many pulls I had.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt,
Mm-hmm.
this is how much I really do like this character, mostly because, again, just to give mild spoilers, W is introduced as this reunion higher up, but then when you go through all her different stories, especially in the event Dark Knight's Memoirs, I believe is what the event was called, and you get the backstory of who W is, what her relationship is to kind of the Doctor and Rhode Island as a whole. I don't know. She's one of my favorite characters in terms of personality types. She is an AoE sniper, and I kind of like how I force myself to use her even in situations where it doesn't really make sense to bring in a physical AoE sniper. But Matt,
Mm-hmm.
that's my affinity towards W. And, touching back what we discussed, some of the different fan traits that the people have placed on W when it comes to fan creations has, that early tsundere, a bit of yandere when it comes to it as well. And, it's everything I like in a character, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
But that's me coming to W as a game player, someone who has, saved up for her for over a year, 2 years ago. And so she does appear in episode 3 of Arknights Prelude to Dawn. And Matt, it's a really jarring appearance if you're an anime only viewer, just because, she shows up with a few reunion members. She's she's essentially appearing after a battle that the Rhode Island skeleton crew has fought. You can see that they're on the ropes. She's there to retrieve the Doctor. She demands that they hand him over. Amiya says some stuff. She realizes it's Amiya, and then she's like, okay, I have everything I need to. Let's go, boys. And then she's gone. It's sort of similar to that tuxedo mask meme. And even Doberman, one of the Rhode Island's operators there on the scene, she even says straight up after W leaves, is that it? Was that all she wanted? And Matt, it's a really jarring scene, mostly because as a game player, I know who W is in the grand scheme of things. I know what her relationship is to Rhode Island. But as an anime only watcher, we're exposed to essentially one of the antagonist army's big bad who appears, taunts the enemies, and leaves. And when it comes to, I guess, anime adaptations, Matt, what do you think about having characters appear that have such grand backstories that you need to have the context to really appreciate their appearance? Do you think it's something that like should be included at the risk of kind of making your anime only viewers confused, but you're still rewarding longtime fans? Or do you think it's there should be some sort of coherentness when it comes to the anime viewing experience?
I think I see this from two, I think, major perspectives. I think that if you really are just an anime only watcher, if I was an anime only watcher and like just this random scene happened that seems like it didn't really add much to the story, I think I would personally dislike the scene and I wouldn't want it in there.
Right.
But Jared, I think that from the view of, I don't know, the people making this anime, and I guess like the owners of Arknights in general, I think that they want to have these kind of like little breadcrumbs so that the anime only watchers get curious enough to look into, oh, who is this person? And maybe they can suck them into the game.
Right.
Because Jared, I'm going to be honest with you. These past like 2-ish weeks that we've been talking about Arknights has really, really made me want to replay this game. And I don't know, Jared. I know that if I get into it, I think I'm going to like wail hard for like a week if I do.
Matt, if you can hold off, I can let you know when the next limited event starts, just because I feel like when it comes to Arknights as a game, as I said last week, you can really jump in whenever. I feel like with the operators you are given to free and through your free daily roles, you can really build up a core team that can really push you far. And, if all else fails, just type into Google, hey, what's the trust farm guide here? But during their limited events where they have limited operators, they usually give out one free 10 pull for that banner and then daily single pulls for like 2 weeks or so. And I think those are usually the best times to start if you're starting brand new. But again, if you just want to save towards those limited events, you can just start whenever, since there's usually events running every few weeks. And then each event gives you a free. Matt, how do you feel about the term welfare 5-star, where these are the 5-star characters that they give out for free, and the community calls them the welfare units? And that, I think that's a really mean label to give a character.
Yeah, man. I want to like get back in because I did enjoy my time with Arknights. I just like fell off because I don't know, I started playing something else.
Yeah.
I'm just scared that if I get pulled back in, I'm just gonna be tempted to spend more money.
Matt, that's how they get you. During my saving for W run, I was a monthly card purchaser. And I purchased that monthly card, and that monthly card gives you, I forget how many rolls you end up getting with it, but it was like $6 a month after taxes, and I did that for longer than I probably should have, Matt Alba.
Jared,
so
the first autocomplete in Google for Arknights, how much? The first autocomplete is, how much is 300 pulls?
I can't tell you that off the top of my head, Matt. I probably could, but I'd be ashamed to tell you. But yeah, overall, again, as a game player, to see W there and what she actually means to the story, and even seeing all the different characters be kind of confused about her appearance was pretty, to me, fun. But I can see from an anime viewing perspective how kind of abrupt and jarring that might have been. But another thing that I really enjoyed about this episode, Matt, a lot of cameos, a lot of characters in the background, which again makes me yearn for that. Give me that daily life or daily lives of a Rhode Island operator, because there are so many characters that you can explore for one-offs. But then again, maybe I'm just tainted by all the fan creations that I can see on the subreddit, on all the fan discords, because Matt, when you have, as I said, when you have an ensemble of so many operators, I think right now I have over 200 operators in the game. And of course, not everyone gets their chance to shine other than one or two events. But Matt,
Mm-hmm.
everyone can shine in fan art, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So, Matt,
Mm-hmm.
speaking about games where you can collect friends who may or may not have funny ears, Matt, there was a game that came out this week that set online discourse ablaze like a fire attack. Matt, how are the new Pokemon games?
Jaren, I've been playing Violet for I guess like since its release. So I've been playing it for maybe like 48-ish hours.
Right.
Jaren, I'm very somewhat like disappointed in this game because I think that this is probably the best Pokemon game, but it is inside the worst like technical wrapper.
Right.
Because Jaren, there's been a lot of talk on the internet about like just how rough this game is, and Jaren, this game is rough. There's like texture pop in. There's I think this is the only Switch game I've ever played where I had a crash to home screen.
Oh, that's wow. Okay.
But like yeah, Jaren, like the FPS is like wild in this. The textures are not great. The shadows I think are really what like kills the overall look in this game, and all of these like very pretty bad like technical issues to have even one of these in your game, to have like I don't like five or six of these just like piling up together makes this a really rough experience for what I think is like probably the funnest Pokemon game that I've like played.
Wow. Okay. I'm really interested to hear your experience with it, just because again, Matt, let's be honest, the internet has been a negative Nidoking recently with all these criticisms, and I feel like some are pretty warranted given that this is Game Freak's attempt at a mainline Pokemon game on the Switch for how many attempts, like actual attempts, have they had? They had Sword and Shield, they had
Arceus, Let's Go, Pikachu, and
Yeah.
Eevee. Can't think of it.
And then
Do you want to like
Pearl.
count like the remakes?
Yeah, the remakes of Pearl and Diamond, I believe. So I think there was one comment that stood out to me in particular when describing, Pokemon Violet and Scarlet. And I wanted to get your thoughts about this as well, Matt. It's that Pokemon, I remember reading, I believe it was a Reddit comment, that Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, a lot of reviews are saying it's a step in the right direction, but the fact that this is already the third, let's say third traditional Pokemon game on the Switch, how many right direction steps can you realistically take before you have to say, hey, no one knows actually where this franchise is going into? And when you do say that this is one of the better Pokemon games inside a really technologically flawed wrapper, Matt, like
Yeah.
how much of those flaws really detract from the overall experience? Just because, as you said, it's really fun, but how much has all the bugs taken away from your overall experience?
Okay. So I think I can forgive like a lot of these bugs just because like they're not things that I care too much about. The camera going kind of wonky sometimes and it going underneath the floor so that like the floor like doesn't render for a split second. Like that stuff, like okay, I'm fine. I'm okay with like the textures being bad are like okay, like whatever. But I think the thing that like hurts me the most is how bad or how short the render distance in this game is, Jared. Because like I think you can probably walk your Pokemon render distance, I guess I should say, because I guess there's like two different kinds of render distances in this game. There's render distances for just the terrain, which like goes like generally far because it's kind of like Breath in the Wild in that sense, where if you see something in the distance, you can walk to it, so they have to render it that far, right? But my issue is more so with the I guess Pokemon or even like NPC rendering, which is that like I think maybe it renders the equivalent of like 10 meters around you in terms of it populating it with NPCs or Pokemon. And for a game where I think one of the very good changes that they made is that they no longer have random battles. The Pokemon appear on the overworld. I think that that render distance is way too small. Like, even if you're going to just like mess with the FPS for those the NPCs, like, I think that a render distance is too small in this game. And Jaren, I also feel like FPS isn't something that I hold in like too much like high regard. Like, as long as it's stable, that's fine with me. But Jaren, how do you feel about like FPS like mixing? I don't know if that like makes sense or not, or like how like some things will have a different FPS than others.
Yeah, that's something I've been kind of used to. We typically, I guess in some of the games I've played, I'm kind of used to it in that, say, the cinematics might be rendered at 30, but then gameplay is at 60, or even vice versa
Oh,
sometimes as
sorry.
well.
That's not really what I mean.
Oh, really?
I guess probably the more like most recent example that I can think of that you probably noticed is Splatoon.
Yeah.
Like how the main characters are at like whatever the highest, like 30, 60, whatever Splatoon runs at. And then if you look in the background of the stages, like all the NPCs are moving at like 15 frames per
Oh,
second, or like
you mean something in that regard? Yeah.
yeah.
I think for me, that's something I don't necessarily mind per se. It's not a super deal breaker. In those instances, I find them entertaining more than anything because,
Mhm.
Matt, I come from, the Forza Horizon games where the NPCs or like people in the crowd are moving not at the uncapped frame rates that I'm used to for my car to go in. So I think
Uh-huh.
in that regard, it's not, again, it's not a deal breaker, but depending on what atmosphere the game's trying to convey, that could be something that really breaks some immersion. But for the
Mhm.
most part, I think that's a compromise I've come to expect depending on the type of game and what kind of hardware it's running on, whether it be the Switch, whether it was on my PC when I didn't really upgrade it. So it's something I don't necessarily mind, but when I do notice, it's one of the things that make me go, huh, you know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm
Mhm.
coming
Mhm.
from. Why is that something that is apparent in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet?
Yes, Jared, it is very apparent in Scarlet Violet because, like the way that I was saying for Splatoon and the way that you were saying for Forza, like this sort of thing happens for people that are like kind of like in the background, like they're not the main focus of the scene. In Pokemon like Scarlet and Violet, they're just mixing it up everywhere. Like basically any NPC will be operating at like 5 frames per second until you get close enough to them. And it's not even limited to NPCs. I think the most jarring one that I saw so far in my gameplay is that there's a area in the game that has a big windmill. It's like the focal point of the town, and you can see it from very far away, and it like turns at a very choppy, like I don't know, 5-10 frames per second, and it just looks really unfortunate, especially when everything else is moving basically smoothly around you. The fact that like the focal points of this game are getting that kind of low FPS treatment to, I guess, like, just say whatever performance it can, really jarring and gives the whole game kind of a bad look.
Right.
It is a lot of kind of like these kind of like things like, oh, if you're running towards a mountain, the mountain will be casting a shadow, but it'll only be casting a shadow like 10 meters around you. Like as you're walking forward, you can see more of the shadow rendering
Right.
on top of what should have been like light. Like there's a lot of all these kind of things that make it a really chunky experience. It does really feel like I'm playing like a beta of a game that like just basically hasn't been polished,
Right.
which is like very very like unfortunate. I think like going back to that thing you said earlier on how the Pokemon games keep taking like a step forward in the right direction, but like they're still very clunky. I think in terms of like gameplay, I like all the steps that Pokemon has been taking. It's just that those steps are being really hampered by the fact that they're not also taking steps in terms of tech like technological
For sure.
steps, where all the Pokemon games have looked pretty rough. Like ever since like Sword and Shield. I guess that was the first new one on Switch. I don't
Yeah.
That's right?
That
Yeah.
was the Switch's first traditional mainline Pokemon because, as you said, we had the Let's Go, Eevee, and Pikachu, but I don't necessarily consider those mainline Pokemon games when those were initially announced. I remember the internet community being really disappointed in the announcement because they wanted something that was, the next mainline Pokemon, the next something that really pushed the series forward. And I think that's when a lot of or it was either Game Freak or the Pokemon Company said that, yeah, the next one is coming. We got Sword and Shield. And Matt, I know we weren't recording podcasts at the time, but I think when I was
Hmm.
playing through Sword and Shield, that was like the first time I really thought, okay, I'm feeling the fatigue here. There's even like the open worldness, even if you can call it that, the open area in the middle.
Uh-huh.
I thought that was a really awkward and bare kind of just overall experience where I didn't think it it wasn't something that really gave me hope about, oh, are they ever going to realize the dream that I feel like a lot of kids who grew up with Pokemon had of, where's the MMO equivalent? Where's the big open world? Where's all of the Pokemon roaming about? And of course, when you heard everything coming out about Violet and Scarlet, saying, oh, there's an open world, the Pokemon are roaming about, essentially, oh, maybe those dreams that I had, oh God, what was it, like 20 years ago
Uh-huh.
now, 2015, 25 years ago now, are being realized. And Matt,
Hmm.
uh, you told me how the tech was in these open worlds, but overall, how are my MMO dream or my light MMO dreams realized here? How's the open world? How are the environments and how are the Pokemon in them? Uh, Both considering how technologically flawed the game is, but also just kind of in their presentation.
I okay. Like taking a step back from all the technical flaws in this game, which I'm going to say again, they're rough. Like they are bad. This would be like super unacceptable if it was not a Pokemon game. Even it
Yeah.
being a Pokemon game, it is like still generally pretty unacceptable. But taking a step from that and just going purely into like a gameplay sense, Jared, I'm loving my time with how this game is going.
Okay, Matt,
Mm-hmm.
let's step away from being the negative Nido Kings. And Matt,
Mm-hmm.
let's become positive pincers.
Uh huh.
Why do you love Pokemon Scarlet and Violet? And going back, what right steps are it taking that hopefully once we get to maybe a Switch 2 or the next generation that
Mm-hmm.
you would hope that finds their way into a better wrapper?
So, okay, Jaren, I really like the way that they've decided to do this Pokemon game. The open worldness of it is actually, I think, like pretty well done for as far as like Pokemon could be. Just to put like a quick like idea of how Pokemon is working now. In this game, you can basically go wherever. They've taken the basically the ride Pokemon from RCS and they've just compiled it into one Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet, which is your Miraidon, or I can't remember the one in Scarlet, but in Violet it's called Miraidon. It's basically a Pokemon motorcycle, and it puts all the abilities into there. Like, oh, this is your bike, this is your plane, this is like your surfboard. Like, it does everything for you. And the way that this game works is that it divides the story into basically three general storylines. There's the gym storyline, which is basically the way the game's always been working. There's the Titan Pokemon storyline, which basically pulling you into how the raid mechanics in this game works. And then there's the Team Star storyline, which is basically showing you how the auto battle system works. And I think that all of those like three things together kind of like pulls you to the game pretty nicely. I'm going into like I guess a little bit of a negative Nidoking thing here, Jaren, that I'm very disappointed about in the game is that none of those. Okay, it is an open world game where you can go wherever you want, and I've almost been like kind of analysis paralysising myself in terms of where I should be pushing. But the fact that those paths are all kind of preset on where you or what the optimal path is in terms of like difficulty, none of those things like scale. Which I think I talked to you or talked on the show about before, where I was really hoping that with the open world nature of this game, that something in the game would be like, okay, you have no gym badges, you come to this gym, that means the Pokemon that you're gonna fight at this gym are level 10. And then,
Right.
like, oh, when you go to the next one, it's like, oh, okay, we see you have one gym badge. Now the Pokemon you're fighting at this gym are going to be, like, level 15. I was really hoping something like that would happen, but unfortunately, that's not in there. But,
Oh, so you're saying that, oh, if I were to walk, it's essentially like the kind of in a typical MMO where if I were to walk into a certain area, I might see the skull and crossbones or the red names on top of enemies, something like
oh,
that.
I wish you could see red names. Actually, you won't know what the level of the Pokemon you're fighting is until you decide to go fight it. So
Oh,
you can get actually messed up like that. Because I definitely went into an area I shouldn't have, and I ran into a Pokemon like
right.
that. But
So you're saying that the open world is, while it is an open world, there does seem to be an optimal path in terms of difficulty and level scaling.
yeah, I think it's actually very you can like relate it actually very easily to like a Fallout game where like oh you can go here but like all the enemies there are high level, but like if you know what you're doing you can work your way around it. But
Okay.
Jaren, I think that this game more than any other open world game recently, I think that this game really had a nice sense of adventure to it. I will admit that like the world is a little empty in terms of like I guess NPC interaction or unique interactions within the world, but there's a lot of like kind of like tidbits of stuff where it's like oh there's like this Pokemon here I've never seen, like well but it's down a cliff and so I have to get down to oh Jaren, sorry, one thing I really love about this game, Jaren, and I think that all open world games I think need to have like this feature, Jaren, they don't have fall damage.
Oh, nice, nice, nice.
I love when like open world games like this don't have fall damage.
What happens when you fall? Because my hope would be if you were to fall and it would be a fall damage scenario, your flying Pokemon would kind of just appear under you or guide you there.
Not
What happens if you were to fall?
Nothing really. I can jump off a mountain and like all that happens is that you just basically get floor stunned for a second. Like you hit the floor kind of hard and then your Pokemon like I guess like stumbles against the floor for a bit and you're unable to move for like I don't know a second or two.
Right.
Like it's nothing too bad, but I really like how regardless of there not being NPCs, and I think this is where the lack of render distance hurts it the most. There's so many little like things that are just like, hey, if you walk over here, I can see like three things that look interesting to me, and I can only go to like one of them, and you have to like backtrack and like go
Okay.
back. Like I really like that sort of thing in open world games where oh okay like I know my target right now is I need to get to the next town, but I keep getting pulled aside by just random stuff, and next thing you know it's like been 2 hours and I haven't even gone like I don't know 500 meters from like where I initially started. And I kind of just like
Right.
love that sort of, hey, there's so much stuff here for you to kind of interact with or deal with. And speaking of just like stuff to deal with, Jaren, I think that if you are the type of Pokemon player who likes to collect Pokemon, this is the best game for that because
Okay.
I don't
Why do you say that,
I
Matt?
don't think that I've seen this much Pokemon like variety in any Pokemon game. Like going from the very opening of the game to the basically only mandatory part of the game, which I think that if you were to kind of just like mainline this the story beat where you go from your house to like the professor's house to get your first Pokemon, and then you go to the school where the game is then like okay cool now you can go wherever. Like I think that that part maybe just takes like if you're going at an average speed like maybe an hour. Jared, within that hour, you can definitely catch at least like 40 to 50 Pokemon, like in within like
Oh,
the
that's
stretch that you
crazy.
can cover. Like, I think that one of the best things that they've done is to just add that. I was like kind of just looking around on Reddit and other message boards, and someone was kind of just like dilly dallying on that task. Someone who hasn't gone from their house to the very first, like, to the school where the game really opens up, they've been able to catch 160 Pokemon within the opening areas, which I think is crazy. And I think that having that much Pokemon variety within the very opening is very good, because when I think back to a lot of the older Pokemon games, I felt like if you didn't pick the fire Pokemon, you were screwing yourself out of basically a whole element or type. Because I always felt like fire Pokemon were very rare towards the start of games and you didn't really have a good alternative.
No, I totally know where you're coming from. And just to be honest, I think you describing the Pokemon variety, especially at the beginning of the game, is something that is really appealing to me because let's face it, Matt, when I think about the beginning of Pokemon games, it's something that, so as a longtime Pokemon player, it's something I've come to expect, but I try to put myself in the shoes of, a new 8-year-old kid who's playing Pokemon for the first time. And man, if I have to be completely honest, I think when I think about the early Pokemon games, I think about how boring the starter area Pokemons are because that's when you're gonna catch your normal flying bird, you're gonna catch your normal rodent Pokemon, you're gonna catch your caterpillar looking bug equivalent, you know what I mean? Where I think one of the weakest parts about Pokemon games in general is just that the early game Pokemon don't look cool at all. Maybe you'll luck out and get a Pikachu. But for the most part, I feel like the starting Pokemon or the starting areas and the Pokemon you find are so uninteresting where that really disappointed me because as I continued playing these games, I found myself wanting to get out of the starting areas quicker and quicker just so I could see some actually cool looking Pokemon. And if you're saying that the variety is definitely there, I think that really solves that problem about just being interested in the Pokemon themselves.
Like I don't know, I really like that the way that they like really added that Pokemon variety. And Jaren, like I fully understand why random battles would just happen in the old game because Jaren, sometimes these Pokemon, they're tricky, Jaren. Like, I'll just be walking and I'll accidentally walk into a Pokemon and these Pokemon are fully rendered, like, in the thing. It's just that, like, I don't know, my character just happened to be covering their model and, like, I'll just run into them, especially when you're on, like, your motorcycle Pokemon because that thing is, like, pretty big. But, I don't know, like, I really like the sense of the Pokemon kind of just, like, being around everywhere and having to pay attention to them because Jaren, of course, Pokemon games are going to have shinies, but like one of the things that they removed in this game that wasn't RC, I don't know if removed is the right word because like maybe just wasn't ever in this because like Arceus and this game or these two games were made concurrently, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But Arceus had a kind of like tiny jingle that played when a shiny Pokemon spawned, and that isn't in this one. So I feel like super compelled to look at like every Pokemon very carefully as I'm like riding by them on my motorcycle, trying to figure out, hey, is this a shiny or not? But
that's a really dangerous slippery slope, man.
Yeah. But like I don't know.
But yeah, I kind of wish the jingle would still be there just from a user, I don't know, just from a quality of life, accessibility perspective. Because Matt, I don't know, I was looking at some screenshots and we had the meme of from Pokemon Go, all these Pokemon are doing like funny or they're unfortunately layered on one another, so they look like funny poses and stuff like that. But for the most part, I don't know how much I want to dedicate myself to looking at or scanning every pixel, just saying, oh, is this off color, is this a shiny? I would hope that there is something more, like maybe a sparkle or something to help kind of catch you, like bring your attention to that. But maybe that's just me being picky.
See Jared, okay, there's one like new feature called the auto battles, which kind of sort of maybe helps with this a little bit because one of the things that you can do in this game now is send a Pokemon out to auto battle for you. It will just like you let your first Pokemon out of its Pokeball, and then it walks up to like the NPC Pokemon and it basically just does like a fight animation with them. If your Pokemon is like high up enough level or it has a like type advantage, it wins. It will maybe sometimes lose a little bit of health or not, and then that Pokemon is like removed from the or any Pokemon is removed from the screen, and you get like I think maybe like 10-20% worth of the experience you would have gotten if you fought it normally, which I think is like a pretty like decent amount for the amount of work you're doing, and it clears it out like generally quickly. And one of the nice things about this feature is that if it runs into a shiny Pokemon, it won't fight it, so it won't just auto kill it, which I think is very nice.
Okay.
And speaking of the battle,
is it alerted that it's a shiny, or
I think like if you just try to like make it fight again, it won't do anything. Like it doesn't like it'll say like, oh, he doesn't want to fight that Pokemon or something like that.
Speaking about the auto battles, I was really curious how the battles, like the battle system, is this time around. Just because the turn-based combat of the Pokemon, it is a tried and true formula that we're all used to. In terms of you actually battling, is there any new additions here? Is there okay? What's the gimmick? What's the Gigamaxing, or what's the gimmick in that terms? But I guess aside from that, are there any notable changes that caught your attention?
Not really. Like the Pokemon battling is just Pokemon battling. It's been the same ever since like we were kids. You have your 4 moves and you like pick them and you make them fight. But one of the things that I actually like about the moves is that they brought back the move relearner that was in Pokemon Arceus. Or basically you just pick your Pokemon from your Pokemon menu and then you can go through any of the moves that they've learned and you can assign it to them like on the spot. So you could just like, if you really wanted to, on the fly, just change your Pokemon's moves to suit a battle that you know is about to come up. But going towards like the gimmick of this game is called terastallizing, which basically changes your Pokemon's type to a type that they have, like to their terastallization type. And any moves that you have that match your terastallization type are stronger. Like that's basically the whole like gimmick this time around. And Jaren, I do not use this gimmick at all because I think it is for the most part, I think it's like a too possibly complicated gimmick for me because outside of like all the normal Pokemon, their terastallization type is going to be the same one as their main type.
Right.
Where it gets tricky is the raid Pokemon because the raid Pokemon will, I don't know if it's like truly random or if like they're just like pre-seeded, but like these Pokemon will be like Pikachu, for example, and then it will have a rock terastallization type. And so when you terastallize your Pikachu, it becomes a rock type. So like I was saying, I don't know if like that's really random or if Game Freak just decided to just like set up certain combinations for you to get through the raids. But like either way, I think that this is really going to be an interesting change on the the competitive Pokemon battling scene, more so than just like a fun gimmick to play around with. Because I think the concept of being able to change your Pokemon's type in the middle of a battle seems wild to me if you have to like look at it from a competitive perspective.
Right.
But I think that one of my favorite things, Jaren, about battling in this game is not something that I think Game Freak intended. It's more so just like a happy circumstance of how the game works now, which is that when you go into a battle, it doesn't like bring you to a different screen. It happens on the world map, right?
Okay.
So as you're battling, they're not going to like affect you or anything, but sometimes wild Pokemon will just run into the middle of the fight and just stand there and look like they're taking the hit, which I think is a good goof. But also like another thing is that the Pokemon that do that are Pokemon that like started within that like field that you started your battle in. But other Pokemon, I think they can't come into a certain distance of you. So, but you can still aggro them, so they'll walk towards you. And what ends up happening is that you kind of just have a crowd of Pokemon kind of just like watching your fight. And I always think that that's
so
like a
cool.
good goof. Because you can move the camera around during a Pokemon battle now. So being able to just like, I don't know, spin the camera around and you just see you have like I don't know, a bunch of just like birds on the sideline kind of just like watching your fight I think is a really good goof.
That's really cool, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt, we went through the open world, we went through the battles, but Matt, we gotta talk about the Pokemon. So Matt, first up, which Splatfest team did you join when you started up Pokemon Violet?
Jaren, I joined the Water Splatfest team.
Okay.
Jaren, the final evolution for the Water starter looks so stupid.
Matt, that was my next question. In terms of, I think we've talked about this in the past with how with each new generation, I honestly do feel like the Pokemon have become, over designed.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, in terms of, this generation of Pokemon, how are the new Pokemon designs? Are there any that you're feeling? Are there any really cool looking ones? And of course, Matt, who are the duds? I was going to say who's Dudmon, but this is Pokemon and not Digimon.
There's a lot of there's a lot of like duds here. And I think for just like the starting three, I think that their first four, I think they're all like pretty well designed. I do lean towards Quaxley a lot. When they evolve to their like second evolution, like I really like the grass Pokemon's Floragato. I think it's a very nice looking design. When you compare it to like the other two starters, it actually has a very Digimon aesthetic. I think that a lot of the Pokemon this time around have a very Digimon-y aesthetic to me. I don't like really like they look less straight up animal-y and they look more Digimon-y. But
Right.
as far as the third evolution or final evolutions for the starters go, I do think that like the fire one takes the cake. It's just like a burning alligator. I don't know. It's like an alligator ghost, and I think that's like of the three the most like interesting looking. It's an
Right.
alligator ghost that sings karaoke. Basically, that's what's like going on with it.
That's a pretty good goof.
Mm-hmm. Jaren, I actually really like the design of this region's starter bug Pokemon, which is I believe it's name is Tarotula, which is basically just a spider that's like wrapped up in a bunch of webbing all the time. And I don't know.
Okay.
I really like the aesthetic of it. I think it's a very I don't know, I think it's a very nice aesthetic. Like it looks like a spindle almost, or like not a spindle, like a bundle of yarn with legs coming out of it. I think it's a really nice design. I think as far as like real duds go, I think this is okay. I think this is just a fundamental Pokemon design problem or design type that I don't like. I don't like it when Pokemon have tools. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, there's one called I don't even know what it's called. It's like Tink Tonk or something, and it's like this pink blob that carries a hammer. As far as like the Pokemon itself goes, it's a very good Pokemon. Like it's very strong. It's like a Steel Fairy, which is I think a decent typing. But the design itself, I don't really like because I don't know. When Pokemon start interacting, I think Pokemon should always be animals.
Yeah.
Instead of like interacting with real world stuff. But
Yeah, I think something like a Farfetch I'll let slide just because it's a leak. You can probably find that in the wild. But I don't know, the notion that is that the Pokemon that the Steel Fury that you were telling us about, is the hammer just given at the go or is it received during evolution?
I think it's given during the go. Jared, the wild thing about this hammer is that in its like Pokédex entry, it's like, oh yeah, this hammer is made from other dead steel Pokemon.
Great. Of course.
Which I think is an amazing entry. But like I still think it's a dumb design. Jared, there's a Pokemon called I have no idea how to say this Pokemon's name. It's Nacli. So I've been reading it as like Nacli.
Yeah, Nacli sounds
Nacli. Jared, I love this Pokemon. Not because of how, like, Jared, I think this Pokemon looks stupid. It's very cubic in design, but it is basically a block of salt. And the fact that they put NaCl in its name is, I think, like, it's like chef kiss of Pokemon Scarlet Violet.
okay.
Just having that goof, like, it starts as, like, Nacli, then it becomes Knucklestack, and then, I can't even remember the name of its, like, final evolution, but the fact that it keeps, like, the salt in there the whole time is, I think, like such a good goof.
That's a really, I guess, yeah, in terms of creative Pokemon name, that's pretty good as well.
Yeah, it's a good name. It's a bad design. Pokemon. It looks so dumb. It looks like they straight up pulled it out of like the Game Boy era and they never depixelated it.
Man, Matt,
Mm-hmm.
I know you touched upon it when you first started telling us about Pokemon, but what are your thoughts on the motorcycle Pokemon that you have? I remember when I first saw gameplay clips of it, I wasn't necessarily sold on it. I think it was a bit goofy looking, but
Yeah.
how is it in action and practice for you, Matt, now that you have your hands on it?
In functionality, I think it's like it totally makes sense for this game. Like it adds all the stuff you'd want in an open world game. It lets you go faster. As you get upgrades for it, it lets you cross different types of terrain. It itself speeds up and it can also like glide. Like I think that those are really all the tools that you really want for a open world traversal game. I will admit that like at first I wanted Violet just because like I love the color purple, so of course I'm going to gravitate towards Violet. But like I thought, okay, if I'm going to travel around the world, I want to ride on the robotic like motorcycle looking Pokemon because I don't know, that just like makes sense in my head. But I really do feel like maybe Scarlet has the better Pokemon for it. Just because, I don't know if I never knew this going into Violet Scarlet, but the internal theming of the Pokemon in the game, just because of their version exclusivity, is that Violet's exclusive Pokemon are all futuristic, and all of Scarlet's Pokemon are what was the word? I guess ancient,
more primal.
Yeah, primal looking.
Yeah.
And I think Pokemon looking futuristic is not a aesthetic I I agree with that much.
Right.
I think that the more primal looking Pokemon do look better.
Okay.
So
I was gonna ask you what the main difference between the two is, but I guess that really sums it up.
Yeah, Jaren, one of the things that I think is the biggest step back in Pokemon Scarlet or Scarlet Violet if you look past all the glaring technical step back.
Yeah, for sure.
Jaren, you can't really customize your shirt and your pants anymore.
Wait, what? Really?
Yeah, Jaren, I thought Sword and Shield had one of the best Pokemon clothing options that you could have. You change your shirt, you can change your sweater that goes over the shirt, you can change your pants, and all the gloves, shoes, socks, glasses, hats, whatever.
Yeah, for as much as I do poo-poo on Pokemon Sword and Shield, I really did like being able to customize my character. I know one of the things I loved doing was actually, I think a lot of my playtime was just going back and forth between all the different shops to get the outfit I really wanted. Because Matt, I was editing that trainer card more often than I should. So to hear it, is it just scaled back overall, or how's the customization player-wise in Scarlet and Violet?
The biggest issue for me with the customization is that so the theming is that you attend a Pokemon Academy, right?
Right.
So the Pokemon Academy would obviously have a school uniform.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And your school uniform limits what your shirt and pants, I guess clothing slots could be.
Okay.
Because they basically just have, okay, you're either wearing your spring uniform, summer uniform, autumn uniform, or winter uniform. And that determines if you're wearing just a shirt with shorts as your summer uniform, or you're wearing these pants with suspenders and a standard dress shirt for your I think that's your spring uniform, or you're wearing a vest and some long pants on your fall uniform, and then you have kind of a blazer and dress pants with your winter uniform. And I don't know, I wish there was more customization there, because it locks those clothing pieces to whichever one you decide to pick. And I'm guessing it's just so that they don't have to render too many outfits, but you can still fully customize your hat, your glasses, your gloves, your backpack, your shoes, and your socks. But I don't know, to not be able to really customize I think the main articles of clothing, it was kind of a bummer for me.
Yeah, that's kind of, well, Matt, you started on the bummer note, and now we're at another bummer note as someone who really loves customization, and again was really impressed with what was found in Sword and Shield. But Matt, how many badges do you have?
I have 3 badges done. I have 3 Titans defeated and 1 Team Star camp destroyed. So it's not too much. I think I'm going into middle game now, but I don't know, I've been having fun with all the systems.
Okay. Yeah, this is definitely something I do want to check in with you just to see how your Pokemon adventures progress. But Matt, rounding up here for this episode of the Mistake Zone, what is your... Okay, let's give us one positive Ponyta thought for early Pokemon Violet, and then of course let's end off on another negative Nino Queen. What are the 2 most memorable instances for you so far?
I think the 2 most memorable instances for me right now are Jared, there was one Pokemon trainer who goes, when you go to battle them, they say, okay, if I beat you, I'm going to confess to my crush. And in my head, I thought, oh, sorry, your anime romance is not about to pan out. And then right after they beat them, I instantly hated this character because they were like, phew, I didn't want to confess anyway. Jared, if this was an anime, or a manga that I was reading, I would have been so tilted at
Oh
this.
man,
Oh my god.
it's pretty good.
And I think actually one of the other changes that I just like remembered right now is how you interact with NPCs, which I think arguably could be good or bad depending on how you feel about this sort of thing. Because Jaren, how much do you care about like world building in like this type of game?
Honestly, Matt, I feel like I'm coming from where I feel like a lot of Pokemon players are coming from, where I'm of that, subset of Pokemon fans that did grow up with the series. We played it since launch back in 96 when we were kids ourselves. And now that it's coming up to almost 30 years, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it's that want, at least internally, that you want the games to kind of grow up with you as well. In reality, Matt, like it's the notion that every new Pokemon game is some kid's first Pokemon game, and that's obviously the design, ethos that they follow, just because it will be someone's first, and they do have to hit the same beats. And but on the flip side, as someone who is in their 30s now, if I'm looking for kind of like the narrative, as much as I would like to see something coming from the Pokemon games at this point, for the longest time now, it has been, oh, I'm assuming it's still the same thing of I need to become the very best, like no one ever was. I need to
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
become a Pokemon master. I need to complete my Pokedex, where it's almost like there is no narrative to me. It is just a means to an end of going around and collecting Pokemon. So in theory,
Mm-hmm.
that's something I would like to see out of these games. And, like many others, I would want to see an actual narrative that is different than what we're used to. But at the same time, I've kind of come to terms with the fact that I probably won't get that. And I'm, as bad as it sounds, I'm any dialogue, any sense of story that kind of gets instantly, me spamming A just so I could get to my eye catching Pokemon the faster. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of my stance on it right now, where I'm kind of in that bitter old man stage where I just don't care, just because I know this isn't trying to appeal to me anymore. So if it does something
Uh-huh.
differently, that's great. But yeah, again, it's not what I'm coming to these games for now.
Okay, so you might actually like this change because I know that I did. They've kind of divided up how you get like non-mainline story in terms of I guess like stuff like oh how history in this world worked or just flavor text about Pokemon. They've actually I think made a decent divide on it. It does probably ruin immersion a bit, but for me and I guess like you who don't really like care too much about that, we're more about like oh let me just like get to the fun part of this game or what we consider to be the fun part of this game, which is that NPCs now have kind of like differing dialogue boxes, which is that they've divided them into either having a white like dialogue box or a yellow dialogue box as you kind of approach them, because they all say something like as you approach them a dialogue box shows up over the head that says something like oh hi hello welcome, or just some kind of like just like small quick text that could lead into an conversation,
Right.
right? So if they have a white dialogue box, it's all that means that they're talking to you about flavor text in the game. It'll be stuff like, oh yeah, like I like Pidgey because like it does like this thing, or do you know like this sort of thing about Pidgey? And then the yellow NPCs are all people who have like some kind of information for you, or they're
Okay.
interactable. Like okay, like this person says hi, they have a yellow box. Oh, that means that they are actually an interactable vendor, or it's someone who wants to trade Pokemon with you, or it's someone who in the overworld you can battle. Um, it's stuff like that. Oh, I think that actually is one of the other bigger changes too. Is that if you rove into an NPC's field of view, they don't auto battle you. You have to talk to them to battle them.
Not that
Um,
ain't right, Matt. That ain't right. That's not my Pokemon.
yeah. There's a lot of people also complaining about this other change, which is that you no longer really enter separate buildings when you go into a building. Like instead, you're just greeted by a menu if it's
Huh.
like a shop or something, which I personally like. I don't know how like you would feel about that sort of thing.
Uh, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense just because in Pokemon games in the past, it's either, oh, here's just a smaller area I can talk to people, or it's a pseudo, I don't want to say dungeon, but like essentially Pokemon's equivalent to, oh, I need to battle, 5 or 6 different people here. There might be some
Mm-hmm.
sort of traversal puzzle, but not really. But
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it is kind of that to me makes sense just because if they're trying to force you into the open world, or if the open world is such a
Mm-hmm.
big part of this game that it's the cynical, oh, they just, it's either they can't develop the intern like the insides here, or but from a game design perspective it is, if they want you to be in the open world, might as well just push you to the open world, not really waste time indoors. But that's kind of how I see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like I guess like that's really an up or down depending on how much you like that sort of
Okay.
thing. Because you can pick up a lot of the information as well from your teachers,
Right.
which Jared, I think there's a wild thing going on there. I don't really know how this like pans out yet, but I think the teachers have like the equivalent of S links because I'll talk to them, do their class, and then talk to them after class and be like, "Hey, your relationship with this teacher has gotten stronger." And like with one of them, they're like, "Hey, can you like do this like side quest for me?" So like I think that like these teachers have S links, but I'm not totally sure.
Okay, Matt, that's definitely something I want to check back in with you, just because, Matt, you know me, I love me
Mm-hmm.
some good S links. And I don't know, Matt, overall, there are, you are telling me about some really interesting concepts that really do make me interested in trying this new Pokemon. But again, it's one of those things where, kind of like Bayonetta, there is a, I don't necessarily want to say better game, but in another world, in another life, if the
Mm-hmm.
hardware was able to support it, there's a more compelling experience where, I guess, to a
Yeah.
lesser extent with Bayonetta, but mostly for Pokemon, I feel like there, from what you said, there are some really good highs here. There is, as we said before, from that, taken from that Reddit comment, it is the step in a right direction, but at the same time, it is kind of just the technological shortcomings, or even like the hardware shortcomings, because the Switch is so old right now that it can't fully realize a lot of these ideas. Or worst of all, no one's actually talking about all the good changes they make, just because everyone is fixated on the bad, which again, like, I'm kind of guilty of, where I fully expected this conversation to revolve around all the technological mishaps, but to hear you say that, hey, there are some really high points here, again, makes me want to play it. But just like me playing through Bayonetta 3, it's, there exists a better version of this game. I don't know if it's a re-release. I don't know if it's on another
Uh
console,
huh.
and that's something that's kind of will take time for me to kind of separate in my head.
Yeah.
But Matt,
Mm-hmm.
this is definitely something we'll be checking in on the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
As we close off, is there one final thought that you have about your, just overall, about your introductory, or I guess your early game of Pokemon Violet?
Jared, there's something in that's been in the games a while now, basically called like wonder trading or surprise trading,
Yeah.
where you take a Pokemon and you kind of just send it into the ether and then you get another Pokemon back. Jaren, I did that. Someone sent me back a Pokemon that had the nickname Venmo and then an account number. Oh man, I saw that and then I'm like, cool, I'm gonna release this Pokemon.
And Matt,
Uh huh.
Matt, was
Uh
Wonder
huh.
Trading a mistake?
Oh man, Jaren, I think so.
So Matt,
Mm-hmm.
well, I guess your homework for this week is for to nickname a lot Pokemon mistake.zone or
Oh
something,
man.
to send
Oh, that's the
everyone
worst.
to our garbage podcast. But Matt,
Oh man, Jared, once Christmas comes, I'm gonna breed a bunch of the starter Pokemon and rename them like that. And just send them out to like I don't know kids who are starting their Pokemon journey on Christmas.
oh man, Matt.
Mm.
But yeah, Matt, this is definitely something we will be, touching upon in the next few weeks. But Matt, this has been a beefy episode of the Mistake Zone. And I want to thank you, as always, for joining us here. I want to thank all our friends out there. I want to thank Hatsune Miku. I want to thank W from Arknights. Matt, any Pokemon you want to thank?
Yo, I wanna take that Venmo Pokemon. That's a good idea.
Which Pokemon was it? Like,
I don't know. It was like some garbage starter Pokemon. Oh yeah, something like yeah. Oh,
good
man.
goof, Matt.
It's a good goof.
Good
Oh
goof.
man, God, I'm gonna. That's such a good way to advertise dumb stuff.
Okay, Matt. I can't wait to Wonder Trade, and I get.
The mistakes
Please.
of Pokemon.
Please watch my Oshi.
Oh man.
Please super chat
God.
her or him.
I cannot wait until I get like Twitch TV / whatever Pokemon. Oh, I think this is good.
And hopefully they'll get Mistake.Zone podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's gonna be capital YT Mistake Zone.
But Matt, that's been the Mistake Zone for this week. And please take it away.
This has been the Mistake Zone, and we're all out of Venmo accounts.